Get ready to rise above the noise and unlock your true potential. Welcome to Unapologetic Uplift, the podcast that's all about keeping it real and helping you live your best life. Buckle up. Get ready to learn, grow, and evolve with us on Unapologetic Uplift. New episodes released weekly.
Welcome to Unapologetic Uplift. My name is Kim Staples, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ianthe Mauro. Today, we are diving into a bit of a sensitive topic, which is judgment. We're going to talk about self-judgment, judgment of others, and being judged by others. I am going to hand it over to the beautiful Ianthe to do some intention setting.
Let us set an intention as we start this podcast episode for everyone within the sound of my voice. If you are listening and you hear us, setting this intention that you are kind to yourself and you have less self-judgment.
And so it is. How beautiful. Self-judgment can be really crippling, can cause us to not pursue our passions and to really not live authentically. What do you think causes self-judgment?
Oh my gosh. First of all, this is hard because when we're conscientious, sensitive people, we want to do our best. We hold ourselves to really high standards. And when we consider that we've messed up, we're judging ourselves. And then it can cause this loop. So in other words, my answer to your question is we do it because we're good people. We self-judge because it's coming from a place of, I know better. I should not be doing this, or yuck, I did that again, or oh, here I go again. You know, this is all signs of self-judgment in the way that we speak to ourselves. And I think, so if we can understand that it comes from a good place, it comes from a place of conscientiousness, and it comes from a place of really wanting to be the best version of ourselves we can be, then perhaps we can start to have a softening and a kindness that can come in so that we can catch ourselves sooner when we're doing it. And this is where I'm really curious, and I want to dive into this part, which is, what is the difference between self-reflection and self-judgment? How do we know the difference? And where, because do you see what I mean? Because what I'm getting to here is I want to be careful not to say, well, every way that we look at ourselves critically is self-judgment. It's not. And
Right.
there are wonderful and helpful ways to be looking at our behavior, our thought patterns, the things that we're doing, any pattern in general that's coming up to teach us something about ourselves or others can be a wonderful learning and growing and welcome tool. And then it can also turn into judgment. So I'd love to know what you think, Kim. What's the difference? How do we know the difference? And I just want to make sure that we're not saying that all judgment is bad, because some of it's really helpful.
Yeah, and I think the big distinction between self-reflection and self-judgment is that when judging, we're making it good or bad. When reflecting, it just is. So we aren't harshly judging ourselves, making ourselves wrong. It's like, okay, I see this thing about myself and I may or may not like it, but I'm not going to make myself wrong for it. I'm going to look at things that I can do to maybe do things differently or have a different outcome. Whereas when we're judging ourselves, that's like, I'm a terrible person because I did this. And often we're comparing ourselves to societal expectations or expectations that other people have set intentionally or unintentionally, or things people have said. We start internalizing based on past experiences, and this is wrong, this is bad, or sometimes this is good and I'm great because of this. But I think we can reflect without judging ourselves and just being open-minded and asking ourselves difficult questions, and it is what it is.
Yeah, I love that distinction that it's not making us wrong. when we're reflecting, and it can look like the same thing as judgment, but reflecting is very helpful, whereas making us wrong is not. So that brings us to now, what about the habit of judging others and how often it comes up? And especially, social media, we're constantly judging. And I notice, I wonder, and this would be something for an anthropologist to answer, but I wonder, is there something in our humanity where it's important for us to look at something and then judge it because there's an exercise in that somehow where we're learning something about the world and about ourselves? And where could that be if that is helpful somehow? Where could we exercise that where we're not in a habit of judgment, which becomes this negative, toxic soup that we're now, wading in, and instead be like, oh, I'm recognizing this thing that I really don't like, which can look like judgment, but it's for a really good reason. I'm now realizing what it is I don't want in my realm, in my energy field. And I'm realizing what I really do want and want to attract. So where is that line? How can we know if we're being ultra judgmental about others quickly, or if anyway, go.
Yeah, I love that. I probably see the
I'm seeing the wheels spinning. Yeah.
So yeah, judgment is natural and it does serve us in some ways. Sometimes we do need to judge certain situations and certain people, and we have to make judgment calls. So I think that that's a really good point, that it's not all negative. We do need the skill of judging. I think when it becomes unhealthy or toxic is when we get into this comparison game where it's like, I'm comparing myself or I'm comparing others to myself or to what my expectations are, and just generally having expectations of others. Like, who are we to expect anything from anybody else? Yeah, it does kind of teeter like everything though, right? We have to be self-aware, mindful, and really, I believe, open-minded.
Yeah. And I think that's where social media does come in and can be helpful in this way. And this might sound weird to say, but as long as we're not becoming these keyboard bullies where we're saying things on a keyboard because it's easy to judge and not feel any ramifications, because we're judging and then we're leaving and we're turning off the computer or we're turning off our phone. If you're not doing that, but you are noticing and recognizing as you're scrolling along things that you really don't like, we could say, well, I'm being so judgmental, but no, I'm actually curating what I want to invite in and what I don't, and what I want to not be a part of. And so I do think that part is interesting, and that can be a very healthy way when we're looking at social media, when we're seeing things that we don't like. And it becomes, of course, quickly unhealthy or toxic if we're now just scrolling to find things that we want to complain about. Then what are we feeding? When it's that old, the two wolves, and it's which one will you feed? Are you feeding negativity and judgment, which is all about right and wrong? Or are you feeling discernment, understanding, information gathering? That's what I want to feed. And it can look similar. So that's why I think this is such an important conversation to have, because if you're wondering, if people even say to you, because there can be a lot of people that are highly sensitive to judgment, and they'll say, because I have this in my life, my daughter can say this very quickly: you're so judgmental, Mom. You're totally judging me. Stop judging me. And I have to look for a minute. Was I judging her? Or was I actually recognizing something she said and having an opinion about it? And what's the difference? Is there one? So I don't know. This is where it can get super, super slippery.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a gray area, I guess, because we all have opinions. And do we share our opinions or do we keep them to ourselves? I think that sometimes when we share our opinions, it can come across as judgmental. And that's why it's always good to ask first, is it okay if I share my opinion? I know, easier said than done with our children, of course. But I also think in terms of social media, it really amplifies the judgments of others, right? People are keyboard warriors and things can explode and go viral, and a whole bunch of people can really amplify a specific judgment or way of thinking. And what really helps us in this situation is being able to validate ourselves. When we're able to validate ourselves, we don't really, I'm not saying we're not affected by the judgments of others, because we're human and it can still affect us, but not nearly as much. When we are seeking external validation and we're going to social media to be validated, it can become really harmful when we start hearing the judgments of others and we encounter those trolls and keyboard warriors.
This is where I would say, please ask ourselves, let's ask ourselves, why do we feel like sharing this right now? Do we have an expectation of, is it because, here would be something that I would deem not a very high vibration way of thinking, but if I want to share something because I want to prove that you're wrong and I'm right, that would be, I think, judgment that turns negative really quickly. If I want to share something, it's an opinion because I value a back and forth with you and I want you to also know what's on my heart and mind, that would be a reason maybe to share. But like you said, not unsolicited advice, not because the bridge from advice to judgment is extremely easy to cross. Like I feel like advice can quickly feel like judgment, and it also depends on your audience. Know your audience. Like with my daughter, she's going to feel more judged by me. She's going to have a hairpin trigger for, oh God, mom's judging me, more than if a really good friend and I overstep because I didn't ask them first, is it okay if I give you my thoughts on this? And what you brought up, Kim, is so brilliant. Please, everyone, if there's one thing that I always want you to take away something wonderful every time we get together and have a conversation, but this is one that I want to really remind myself too, is to not give unsolicited advice ever. Even though, oh my gosh, but I know better. Oh my gosh, I can see for them. I'm so clearly seeing what they need. Oh my goodness, I've had so much experience more than them and I need them to listen to this. All of those things, great. Recognize those in yourself and know that it's a wonderful thing that you have knowledge and you have your intuition intact enough and you want to share. And then please take a breath and say, would you mind if I gave you my take on this? Would it be okay if I gave you my thoughts on this? Ask. And be prepared. Here's the other thing. And I learned this having toddlers. When we ask a question, we have to be prepared that they may say no. And if they do, we can't then say, no, but I just need to tell you. We actually have to be okay with that.
Yeah, it's all about being mindful, respectful, and having that emotional maturity, I think. Yes, ask. And if they say no, they say no. But also, if they accept that, yes, you may share your opinion with me, don't expect them to have the same opinion as you and to necessarily agree, right? It's okay. We can agree to disagree. And please don't try and change their mind, because that's when it becomes really toxic, when we start trying to assert our opinions and views and change their mind. People can become very defensive and offended, rightfully so. And I know it's not the easiest thing, especially when it's somebody you care about and you want to help them and they're not seeing the way that you're seeing it. And you know that if they just did this thing, things would be so much better. This is really, really challenging for those of us that are helpers, right? It can be with clients. We see something and we're like, oh, if they do this thing, it'll help them so much. It will completely change their life. But doesn't matter how much we see it, they have to see it. And if we push it on them, there's this repulsion that will come from it rather than them actually embracing it. Or if we're just patient and wait for them, or maybe ask them questions to help them have the epiphany themselves, it's always so much more helpful.
Yeah. And I think you brought up something great there too, which is assumptions. And I think assumptions is the opening to judgment. So when we're making assumptions, and if anyone is not aware yet of a book that I talk about a lot, The Four Agreements, one of them is don't make assumptions. When we make assumptions, there's so many, I would just say, I'm going to fully judge assumptions and say that they're really shitty and they make people feel terrible and they're not usually true. So that's one place that I can use judgment. I can practice judgment by saying that assumptions are not a good thing to do. When we have assumptions and we lead from that place, there's so many things. We're positioning ourselves like we know better. We're positioning ourselves like we know it all. We're aware of things that may not necessarily be true. And there's an assertion of a kind of arrogance that's in assumptions too. And even if it feels like it's coming from a good place, I don't see how it can be. So when you really get down to it, wouldn't it be a beautiful thing? And again, you mentioned that we're human, so we have to always remind ourselves that, and I make all of the mistakes that I talk about, I make them. And I make them, I don't think that healing is linear, and I don't think that learning and growth is linear, and it doesn't matter what age I am. I might fall back into something that I did when I was 14 that I need to remind myself not to do anymore, even though I'm 54. So these things, so I just want you to know I take full responsibility and humbly let you know that I am not practicing these things perfectly ever, even when I talk about them, which is one reason why I love having these conversations with you, Kim, because it reminds myself too of these things that are important to me. Even if they're things that we learn, we don't always practice them consistently. So these are great reminders, and I love to be able to talk about this stuff. So no assumptions. And then I think it'd be really cool if you could come up with, and if I could come up, both of us, a story where something has happened to us where either we have been super judgmental and it backfired, or someone has been super judgmental of us and it's backfired, and it's in some ways caused some form of discomfort or harm, and we learned from it. I would love a story.
I'll have to think about that for a minute. While thinking, the word assume, if you break it up, it is ass you me, because when we assume, you make an ass of you and me. Just throwing that out there.
I've always loved that. It's true. So true.
But stories, can you think of one? I'm sure I have many.
Well, there's a lot of times people assume a lot of things about me. I've had a lot of people assume things and then become judgmental. So an example of that would be even very recently, I had someone who said, I assumed you were vegan. And I said, really? That's interesting. Why would you assume that? So they were upset with me because I ordered a hamburger. And I said, well, okay, so that's assuming and judgment. So here, let's go. Let's get into this, right?
Yeah.
So I was curious, why do you assume that? Now, here's the funny thing. It didn't actually shock me because I've had so many people that assume I'm vegetarian. So many people assume certain things about me. And they say it's because somehow I look like a hippie to them, and somehow to them, a hippie is equated with vegetarianism. They think that because my candle company is vegan wax that it uses, that means I'm vegan. Now that I could see how there'd be a connection there. There's something about it. Like I somehow present to people like I would be vegan. I'd love your opinions if anyone wants to tell me why, if this makes sense to you, but I'm not, and I haven't been. I was raised vegetarian. I started eating meat as a teenager, and I loved it. And I find my body feels better when I eat meat. And lately I've eaten quite a lot of meat in my diet. And I also understand and appreciate people. My mom is a vegan and a lifelong vegan. And I appreciate those people in my life. I don't make fun of them. I'm not one of those people that says, oh, you have to have meat. As long as you're being aware of your protein intake and your body and what it does, then there's so many different ways that you can have nutrition. So I don't judge it, but I'm not a vegan.
So I think that's an example of people making judgments and assumptions based on things that they have experienced in their life. Maybe somebody they know that does similar things to you, whatever that may be. Maybe because you have long hair.
It's true. How weird is that? Like, I'm a hippie because I have long hair.
Yeah,
I wear Chanel perfume, which is not a
yeah,
and my own perfume.
It surprises me as somebody that knows you, but I'm just trying to pull from what would cause somebody to think that. And I think it's based on their own experiences. So they know somebody that maybe looks like you, that was this way, or the long hair, or the candles. There are a number of things that could be, well, maybe because you take a holistic approach to life, that they assume that means that you don't eat meat because other people that they know that take holistic approaches to life don't eat meat. It's funny because now you have sparked things for me as well. And something that I often get judged for, or people assume about me, is that I hate men because I work with women and because of my stance on relationships where I take no bullshit and I have expectations. I have high expectations for myself and others. And I am very selective of the people that I have in my inner circle. And I, of course, encourage women to be very, very, very selective of their life partners. That's the person you have to be the most selective of. And I share a lot of content about relationships and my stance on relationships. I share things that happen in my own relationship. So yeah, I have been accused by toxic men of hating men. And it's always the toxic masculine. The men that are in their divine masculine never, because they see things very similar to how I see them. But I have had comments on social media of men saying, oh, you encourage divorce. Yes, I do. I do encourage divorce. If you are unhappy and your partner is a narcissist and abusive, I 100% encourage it. And I will own that loud and proud. But it's just interesting. You know, people make assumptions based on the little bit of information that they see. They don't see that I am in this relationship with somebody for almost 12 years and have 2 children with him. And despite the fact that I have very high expectations, I also have been through a lot with this man and worked through a lot of issues with him. They're only seeing the one side of that. So it's very interesting. But I can self-validate and I'm going to do me. And you can call me a man-hating, whatever you want. I'm comfortable with myself and the way that I live my life. And I am in alignment with my values and I don't need that external validation. Just throwing that in there too.
Yes. It always goes back to that, doesn't it? Because that's the beautiful learning in all of this is people, we can't control people judging us, but we can control how it affects us and our ability to stay centered in what we know is true about us. So I know that I don't feel bad that I'm not a vegan when people say and assume that I am. I just let them know I'm not. I don't have to hide it. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to go into a whole toxic inner dialogue about, oh dear, and all the shoulds. Same with you. We don't. And the other thing I learned this, I love this so much. And I think that when I first heard this phrase, it was in an Al Anon meeting. That's the Codependent Anonymous meetings that are free all over the world. Anyone interested in more on that, you can always DM me. But here's the deal. They said to defend it makes it real. So when I first heard that, I went, wait. Of course I'm going to defend it. They're saying something that's incorrect. That's not true of me. Of course I'm going to defend myself. That's a strong position. Their point was, if it's truly not real, like you're not a man hater, Kim, I know this for a fact, and I know how beautiful you are to your sons and the men in your life, how sweet and kind and loving you are to my husband and my son. Like, I know this about you. So if you were to get all defensive if somebody calls you a man hater, what does that say then? It gives it weight. It gives it something. It's like now all of a sudden it feels real, and it's not real at all. Right. So what's far more powerful, if at all possible, is the stronger you are in your center and knowing who you really are, all of us. I'm not saying you, Kim, I'm saying you, all of us. We will then not be so caught in a need to defend something that isn't true about us. So when people do judge, it'll quickly fizzle out because we're not going to be a lot of fun, because we're not going to show up to that party with a whole mess of, and I'll prove, and I've got, no.
There was a time.
I'm sure. Yes. Me too.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the fear of judgment. I wholeheartedly believe that when we fear judgment, it is often because we are so harshly judging others. This has been true in my own life at times when I have been super judgmental. I really, really feared the judgment of others. But also another interesting thing about fearing judgment is that it attracts that. So when we have this fear of judgment, it's almost like opening up to the world for people to harshly judge us, and we do experience more of it. But also, it can be stemming from us harshly judging others.
I think that is so true, that it becomes a habit and it invites that energy when we're being judgmental. So I remember, so I grew up in a family where my parents were very judgmental. They had a certain way of thinking and behaving that if others weren't doing that, they would quickly judge. And it was weird things you would not imagine. For instance, if my friends had a set dinner time and curfew or bedtime, my parents judged that and said that that family didn't allow the freedom of expression of their children, and that that was like jail. And they would be very judgmental of that. They'd say, "What do you mean they eat dinner at the same time every night and they go to bed at the same time every night?" Now, we could get into that. There's a lot of funny things about that, but it's kind of backwards from what probably a lot of you listening have heard. So it doesn't matter. My point is, it doesn't matter what it's about when someone's being very judgmental. So then what happened was, of course, my parents, a lot of people judged them a lot, and they did get very defensive. And I would watch this and go, why can't you just get along and just be normal? Why do you have to always, But it was this, that energy had started where they were so judgmental of others that, yes, it opened up all of this judgment from others, because there wasn't the softness and the acceptance of a lot of other ways of being, because that's the opposite. So if you're being really judgmental, what are you not doing?
Right.
What you're not doing is being very curious and open to how others are. And that is oh my gosh, please, the more curious and open we are to how others are, and especially right now, we're in a time where there's so much judgment. Think, if you don't agree with me, you're dead to me, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that makes me very sad, because we are complex beings and sensitive beings. There may have been times when I thought things and responded to things that you, Kim, would have thought was vile. And I don't think that way anymore. But if you had cut me off when I was thinking those things, instead of being curious, well, I wonder why Ianthe's feeling that way or thinking that way, we may not have been able to be close. And what I love is both you and I have the ability, and you're so good at this, but we can be curious. Well, wonder why. I mean, you're so good at this. I wonder why she would think that, or I wonder why she would do that. If we could do more of that and less judgment, what a beautiful thing to allow for everybody to just be who they are.
I totally agree. And if we can go back to your parents for a moment, and how you said they were very judgmental, they did things a specific way. And I know your parents are beautiful, beautiful people, and they were such loving parents, and they gave you the freedom of choice and encouraged you to be your authentic self. And I think a lot of times when people are doing really good things and they feel really good about the way that they're living, they do have those expectations of others, right? And when people aren't meeting those expectations and doing things the same way they are, they can become really judgmental. And we can see this a lot with different religious groups, where they think they're holy and mighty, and when other people aren't the same as them, they judge. And it can come from a good place. They just want everybody else to be loving and free and doing things the way that they're doing them. But we have to, just keep that open heart and open mind and be curious. Why aren't people living as freely and as open as we are? Well, there's a number of different reasons, and it's their choice.
Exactly. And thank you for bringing up how lovely my parents are. My mom is one of the biggest fans of our podcast, and I guarantee you she's going to listen to this. So, Mommy, I love you. Shout out to you and all the amazing ways that you taught me how to be authentic and to think for myself, even if it's in disagreement of you. And I appreciate that so much. So that is what the opposite of judgment. So the opposite of judgment is just allowing people to be who they are. And we can, if we think like what you said, oh, but why can't everyone do this and love this and be this? Because I know it's so much better from where I stand. I can see how good this is and I want to share it. If that's how you feel, just know this. Your example of embodying those things is all anyone needs. And it doesn't matter what you say, it matters what you do.
So much power in that. So much power in that. And you will have a lot more adopters that want to do things your way when you just do that, rather than when you try and shove things down people's throats and force them, right? Like, you can never force somebody to believe something or to do something a certain way. But when you lead by example and they get to see for themselves how good it is for you, that is when people will follow suit.
It's so true. And I also thought of something when you mentioned religion. People will say, I'll pray for you. And it used to bother me. And I thought, that's so arrogant. You're saying that I need to be prayed for. And something changed in me. And I realized what a gift if someone wants to pray for me for real. And it's not, and of course it depends on how they say it and their intention behind it. Someone can say it in a very weaponized way, like, well, I'm just going to pray for you. You know, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who sincerely say, I will pray for you. I am so grateful. If you feel called to pray for me, you're going to spend your energy in connection to God and source in thinking of something positive for me. That is a massive gift. And I'm so grateful. Whereas I used to be very judgmental of that. So I think, you know, and again, we're all works in progress. And our guest, Nimesh, says it as, and I've heard other people say this too, and I like it, is that we are spirits having a physical experience. Is that what he says? How does
Human
he put
experience, yeah.
A human experience in physical form, right? But we're really a spiritual being.
Right.
And it's that, so the human form part of us that can get really irked by certain things. And why would you call me that? And why would you assume that of me? And why would you? But if we really do rise above that energetically and we feel into our spirit, and this can get hard to describe, but if we stop thinking about how we look to others, every word that we're going to say, even what we're wearing, what clubs we belong to, what church we go to or don't go to. And again, we rise up to this place that is, to me, all love, just love, pure love. And as corny as it sounds, I see it as love and light, like a light that all of us have, that we all have access to. And there's no judgment in that place, none.
Right.
And so it doesn't mean we don't have discernment. It doesn't mean we don't recognize when things hurt us and hurt others. It doesn't mean that we're not being vigilant and in our body.
Yeah. I think it's releasing the ego, moving above the ego.
Well, this can quickly become kind of spiritual bypass that people talk about if we just go too quickly into, well, I'm just going to rise above all of it and not have any judgment. That's also not true. And it's very,
Right.
very hard. And I'm not imagining that I don't know in this lifetime if I'll get to a point where I'm not feeling judgment. It's what am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
And how am I going to let it, where am I letting it live in my body? I'd rather not let it live in my body, but I'm not going to say, oh, I'm definitely not going to judge anymore and everybody can do their thing. And that's, that also doesn't work for me.
Yeah, it's a human instinct, right? So it's a part of our instinct, something that we need, like the ego. It protects us in many ways. And we have these experiences that the ego wants to protect us from. So it will make judgments based on those previous experiences. And then we get to decide, which is a beautiful thing. And we get to objectively take a step back and say, is this right? Or is this just a judgment that I'm making based on XYZ? Well, no, I'm going to choose to look at it this way, and I'm going to make a decision based on this.
Oh, you know what else is great about this? The whole judgment piece is I often say on the podcast, define the terms. So if you're going to use, one of our guests will throw out a word and I don't want to assume that everyone knows what it means or even I know what it means. So I ask them to define it. I think that that is a tool to not being judgmental because it takes the assumption out. If we're asking someone, can you define what you mean by that or how you came to that or why you do that? Now automatically we're back into curiosity. We're less into judgment.
Yeah, that's such a great tool to have in your toolbox too. Yeah, I love that. Ask for clarification rather than make assumptions, because a lot of times those assumptions are wrong. And then we make these judgments, sometimes harsh. Sometimes we take action, right? If we just asked the question and got clarification, it could be something completely different.
Another sad thing that happens when we judge others and when we're judged is it doesn't leave room anymore for us to change our mind and grow and be different than we were in that moment that we're being judged.
Yeah.
It creates this stagnant energy of, well, I'm judging you and I'm going to just keep you in this place. And that doesn't, it's just yucky. So maybe, okay, you can judge me for saying, maybe you're vegan. Okay. And this is very, very important to you that everybody on the planet stops eating meat. So when I order a hamburger in front of you, you're extremely upset with me. Now I could choose to become vegan next week. I don't have to stay eating meat, right? But if you're super judgmental, I'm not then safe to come to you and say, or I feel like I have to come to you and say, I've decided to turn vegan. Now there's a string attached to your love and you know what I mean? So it can
Yeah.
create this whole toxic dance rather than just, can I give you my opinion about what I think about meat? And I can say yes or no. And you can give me your opinion if I say yes. And if I say no, you can't because you offered me the choice. And then if I change my mind and I'm trying veganism the next week, I might be really excited to share this with you because you've shared with me what you think without judging me.
Right. Yeah, and there can also be that defensive piece to it. Like, because you judged me, I am not going to tell you or come to you for advice because fuck you.
Yeah, and I may do it imperfectly. I might be vegan today and then forget it. I'm getting that hamburger again. And now I can't tell you. Now I'm hiding. Now I'm lying. And it can set up so many things. Judgment is the gateway to a lot of toxic behavior and thought patterns, I think.
Yeah.
But also helpful, like I said. So this is the thing that's so interesting is it's not all or nothing, even with judgment, because judgment is also a way for us to understand things in people and to figure out what it is that we will tolerate and not tolerate. And that is the discernment, which is the good side, I would say, of judgment. Whereas being judgmental, which is my way or the highway, and immediately pouncing and looking even worse. Wow, there's this whole thing out there now that I've noticed more than ever, very, very strongly, that there are people will put a certain filter over their whole being and listening when they're talking to someone, waiting that if they say one of these three things, they will then pounce on you. And they're not really listening because they're listening through this filter. So, in other words, if there's somebody who's looking to call you, Kim, since you used this as an example, a man hater, they're going to watch for words that you're using and they're not really listening to you because now they're just looking through the filter of, I need to get evidence that this woman's a man hater because I feel like she is based on my assumptions and my judgment about somebody who speaks like she does about narcissistic relationships and divorce.
Totally. Yeah. So just
So
waiting to respond or attack rather than active listening to actually listen and be open-minded and respond. And I think that it always comes back to just being in alignment with your personal values and integrity and getting out of your head and into your body and not being egotistical. Like, recognize the ego. It's not a terrible thing. It does serve its purpose too. But being able to recognize it and keep an open mind, stay curious, and just have an open heart.
that's really it. And I think that, I thought of something and it's as simple as breathing. Yeah, it's as simple as the breath. That's what I wrote down. I'm just saying that it's as simple as the breath. So when we find ourselves in a pattern of looking for that one word that's going to make us pounce on the person, making assumptions, being very judgmental, if we can just stop ourselves by taking a breath and recognizing that we're in that pattern, and that means we're not truly listening certainly not with an open heart, how beautiful will that be to create a bridge of understanding to the person that we're listening to? Just the breath. And that's what you do, Kim. You literally teach breath work. And it sounds like it's so, listen, breathing is automatic. We are not alive if we're not breathing. Why would someone teach breathing? How can that be? And I remember my mom when she was teaching dance when I was little, and she said, wow, most people that she teaches, the first class, she says, everyone is breathing wrong. And I remember thinking, that is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. She said, no, I want everyone to lie down flat on their back, and I want you to put your hand on your belly and your chest, and I want you to just notice your breathing. And what people were doing, and I say people, the truth is these were women in leotards in a dance class. What were they doing? They were holding in their stomachs, because in a leotard, you're holding in your stomach. It's not okay to have a tummy, and you're holding your back up straight because you're in a dance position, right? So what they were doing is they were taking a deep breath with their stomach contracting. So they're holding in their stomach when they take that inhalation, and then they take the out and they let it out for a second, and then it's back to holding. And she said, when we fill up a balloon, what happens? The balloon doesn't contract, it fills with air. Why is your belly any different?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you putting this air? So what you do, Kim, is, and I know this is like, sounds like a non sequitur, but this is one of the tools that allows for the deep self-awareness, that allows for us to get out of the habits of things like self-judgment and super judgmental,
Right.
is breathing. And you teach that.
I do. An easy way for anybody to tell if they are breathing properly, similar to what your mom did, put one hand on your tummy, one hand on your chest. And the way that most people are walking around breathing right now is breathing into their chest, breathing shallow. But you want to get full breaths into your belly, exactly like you described, thinking of it as a balloon that expands when you fill it with air. And then on the exhale, just letting it go.
I love that. And so where can people find you if they want to learn breathing? Do you still do that? Is that something that you are currently offering?
Yeah, they can reach out to me. Probably Instagram is the best way. Kimberly_Staples. And we always put our Instagram handles in the show notes, so you could find them there.
I love that. And I think that it just, again, back to, why do we judge? Why are we judging ourselves? Why do we judge others? It's when we're feeling off, we're feeling insecure about our choices and who we are. We're feeling that we're doing a lot of comparison. We're doing a lot of assumptions. And one of the ways out of that, I mean, deep self-awareness, which is really getting clear with who we are. What is it that we love? What is it that we don't want to tolerate? Mm-hmm. Not forcing ourselves into relationships that aren't working for us, that are triggering our nervous systems, and being aware when that happens, and being able to move out of those with the help of someone like you, Kim, or with the help of whatever tool works for you. And noticing when we're in a lot of judgment, that is potentially a red flag that we're probably not very centered in our self-awareness, and we're not maybe surrounded by people who are making us feel like we can truly be wholly, authentically who we are. So I would hope that, yeah, more of that.
Yeah, and it all starts with awareness, right? Just practice mindfulness, connecting back to yourself. I actually do have a 2-day free nervous system reset that is coming up on November 25th and 26th. This is 2024, in case anybody is listening back in the future.
Yes.
But you can find me on Instagram, and there is a link in my bio to join that.
And it's free. It's free. And it's over 2 days, because you want to give people a little break. And I know that it's only about an hour each day. So it's not a huge time commitment, but it will be huge breakthroughs and incredible support for everyone, for your nervous system, giving you more tools and just giving you the beautiful energy of Kim and all of the work that she has done over the years to bring it to us. I love it. And I'm going to be there. I'm very excited to be there, and I'm inviting everyone I know. So if you hear me right now, take this as my invitation. Come to this. November 25th and 26th.
The hour each day will be broken up. So it won't even be an hour straight, and there will be replays available for a short time for those that join.
And I just want to implore you to not only come to this and give yourself this gift, but everyone listening, find 3 friends. Think of 3 friends right now that you can share this with, this event, which is 2 days of just an hour each day, giving you tools for incredible nervous system reset. And it's so beautiful to do this at a time when now we're talking about, we are in 2024. Now we're talking about the end of November. This would be a time when humans are, because of the way that we're mammals, we should be in hibernation, technically, considering our natural rhythms of things. And yet it's a time when we're called to be usually the most busy. We have lots of events. We have lots of people to give to and receive from. We have things we have to end of year stuff that we have to take care of. There is less light in the sky and more for us on our to-do lists. And so our nervous systems can very quickly get out of whack. And this is an incredible timing for you to take these 2 days of just an hour each day. Think of 3 friends and join us for this.
Yeah, we'll be doing healing and nervous system regulation work. You will get some self-healing techniques you can use on your own, some mental health first aid should you ever need it or be around anybody else that needs it, and some mood boosting activities for you to have as well.
And if you've been finding yourself in cycles of self-abandonment, self-judgment, judgment of others, this is also a great place to come in because you're going to be around people who are doing this kind of work. And like Kim and I, who want to be there just to improve and get better help and support around having kind thoughts and loving thoughts more than those thoughts of fear, anxiety, and judgment.
Yes. Love it.
So I'm a big fan of this. And I can't wait for you all to join me. Yeah, it's so great that you're offering this, Kim, for free. It's really, really cool that you're doing this. It's a service. It's a true service.
Yeah, I want people to have an easier time getting through the holidays this year. It's really just my way of giving back so that people have the ability to thrive rather than survive through these holidays, because they're tough for everybody, I think, in one way or another, even if it's just exhaustion. But for some people, it can be a really, really challenging time.
Yes. And my heart goes out to you if this is a challenging time. And at the risk of sounding like you're a man hater, I want to remind everyone that this is for women only.
Yes, at
she
this
has
time.
her reasons, and you're welcome to ask her.
It's not at all because I hate men. And the women that are doing this work are benefiting the men in their lives so much.
Exactly. We have massive love for the men in our lives. And I feel that the men in our lives deserve so much support and care and love and the ability to be in their both divine masculine and divine feminine, as all of us are on a continuum of divine masculine and feminine. It doesn't have to be one or the other. The operative word there being divine.
Yes,
I
please.
think we've never talked about, I don't hear people say toxic femininity, but I'm sure it exists. Listen, I just want to be in divine feminine, divine masculine.
Yes.
And that's what I'm here for.
Amen. I think it's a great time for us to wrap up today. Thank you so much for being here with me and having these lovely, heartfelt, authentic conversations. I am so grateful.
Me too. And I realized I want to do an episode all about divorce and why it was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life and how I got a lot of backlash for that.
Oh, yes. I am so here for that conversation. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a 5-star review, share us with a friend, and make sure you are subscribed. We will see you next Wednesday. Much love.
And no judgment.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on Unapologetic Uplift. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share the love and tell a friend about us, and give us a review.
Please don't miss a thing. Subscribe to this podcast and explore our sponsors, Objects with Purpose, Eco Luxury Candles, and Divine Activation membership.
Objects with Purpose is more than an eco-luxury candle brand. They are time travel devices in the form of a candle. Light the 3 wicks representing past, present, and future with the validation that you are exactly where you need to be. And if you're ready to raise your level of consciousness and step into your unapologetic, unfiltered, and unbothered era, join the Divine Activation membership at cuttingties.coach/queen. With 3 tiers to choose from, you'll find the perfect fit to support your transformation.
Thank you for your listening and love. We'll see you next Wednesday on Unapologetic Uplift.
Welcome to the Divine Activation membership, a movement for women that are ready to raise their consciousness and step into their unapologetic, unfiltered, and unbothered era.
With your heart, live authentically and become the magnet for all of your soul's desire.
Grow, connect with your heart and body, release unhealthy and unhelpful thought patterns, heal old wounds, create new neural pathways, and reprogram your subconscious with high-value beliefs so you can manifest the life you're meant for.
Ready to take a break from what's holding you back? Visit cuttingties.coach and join the Divine Activation membership today. Hey, unapologetic souls. I'm Ianthe Mauro, founder of Objects with Purpose, candles that touch the soul and the body. I've released a limited edition 3-wick candle collection in 3 fragrances inspired by a time in history. The Time Travel Collection, because scent evokes memory and lighting a candle can truly transport you to your highest self. Anytime.
Ianthe's candles are truly special, clean, safe, even for the body as a solid perfume or massage oil, and smell amazing. But what truly fills her heart is empowering others to be seen in their best light.
In 2020, when the 200 stores that sold my candles across the country closed their doors, I knew it was time to give back. I started guiding others to launch their own candle companies and design candles and fragrances for other brands as a way to share light in a dark time.
So why settle for just any conventional candle? Light the 3 wicks in each Objects with Purpose candle. You're supporting handmade in California, small batch, artisanal, eco-luxury, and treating yourself to a memory-evoking evolution. Visit ianthemauro.com to discover your next favorite candle. Let the olfactory experience inspire cherished memories.